Welcome to the Jill on Money podcast. It's Sunday, October 25th. And today we are running the second part of our two-part interview with Kara Goldin. She is the founder and CEO of Hint Water. And interestingly enough, Hint Water remains a private company. Why is that, we want to know? Here's the rest of our interview with Kara Goldin. So you got 150 million in sales or maybe more. And so you got this great company. Why are you still private? Why don't you sell it and move on?
I think for me, it was always about health. And it was always about building a brand that would really help consumers to get healthy. When people ask me, what's it like running a beverage company? Yes, we are a beverage company, but we're also really an arm, in my mind, to consumers to really help them get healthy. And, we've talked to people over the years, and I think that the biggest issue, again, going back to the original conversation around the beverage industry, unfortunately, the beverage industry is very tied to some core products that they have that maybe are sitting on the front door. And so I think that the concept of water, yes, it's definitely in the right direction, but it's hard to turn large cruise ships, right? I mean, you have to, I think, just embracing. But in the meantime, I think that we've now built a business that is truly unique. I mean, 55% of our business is direct to consumer. So you can go on our website to order the product, which is another thing that we talk about in the book, that I had walls in the industry in how I distribute the product because, so many of these retail grocery stores that are out there, what I had no idea until I actually tried to get my product on the shelf, they're basically owned by these large food and beverage companies. And so, for a small company that is just trying to do better for the consumer, I mean, their chances of actually getting on the shelf, and particularly for beverage companies, is very slim. I mean, it is so hard. I mean, and so what I realized is that we would continue to grow that business. But if we could get direct to the consumer and have that relationship, then, the consumer ultimately wouldn't lose out.
So how many employees do you have now?
A little over 200.
And each employee does have ownership in the company. You seem to be very interested in keeping everyone on the team and motivated. I mean, you don't come from a real management background yourself. In fact, I think in the book you wrote, you had like really zero interest in this, but yet you're managing a company. How is that for you?
What I really, really love is making sure that people feel like they're part of something. And so it's a culture that we've created too. Not only do people have ownership, but it's also they have passion. I mean, I always talk about passion really trumps experience in my view, because if people feel like they are working with a company, a product that they believe in, that they drink, that is actually headed towards something, a mission that they really believe in, that is so, so key. So, for me, I think it's been about hiring. We've definitely hired great managers in, but I think for me, it's really staying focused on the mission and staying focused on the consumer is really the area that I've loved the most. And you look at history, I mean, Steve Jobs talked a lot about this as well. I mean, I would say that there's tons of great founders and leaders that are out there that own the fact that managing people and kind of the day-to-day of that is not necessarily what they love to do. There's other leaders that talk about like that is what they love to do. They're not typically founders and visionaries and idea people, though.
I think people would be interested to learn that you write in the book, money has never been a big motivator for me. And yet, here you are so successful. And as my mother likes to say, rich or poor, it's nice to have money. So while it's not the only motivator, can you talk about what it's very hard. You have this private company, you're making money, obviously. How do you set goals that are non-monetary and how do you measure your success?
It's really happiness more than more than anything else. I mean, I think it's does money, if you don't have money, does that cause stress? 1,000%. But I think the key thing is that the most unhappy people, I believe today, are the people that have so much money that they just don't know what to do with it. For me, being able to engage with audiences, whether that's nonprofits or ultimately employees, or, being able to really kind of make sure that you're lifting people in lots of different directions. That to me is truly happiness. I live in an area in Silicon Valley where clearly there's a ton of wealth, but I think that the challenge for so many people is actually figuring out, how much do you really need? And if you can actually be doing something that you feel like is helping people and actually brings people happiness. I mean, today, I really look at, in particular, since March and this pandemic, the number one thing that everybody I know talks about is health, right? Like they're all trying to stay healthy. And I think it is something that it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter where you live. Everybody is trying to stay healthy. And so I think that also just shows you that if you can stay healthy, that's happiness, right? And so I think that is the most important thing. Do you need money in order to have a great place to live and neighborhood and all that kind of stuff? Yes. Do you need lots to have too much in your closet? Probably not.
Right. I mean, I put this in my own book. I wrote a personal finance book. That's my background, and I cited this study, which really does start to quantify like how much money do you need. Once you have shelter and food and you can kind of pay your bills, like what is the actual magic number that you need for happiness? And there's a sliding scale, depends where you live, but I think it would shock people to know that the more you have does not make you happier. It's just like, your parents probably told you money doesn't buy happiness. Mark and I have this theory about why we're so happy doing what we do. It's a bit about control, meaning that control over your life and your work life. You call yourself an accidental entrepreneur. I imagine that also may have something to do with it. You worked in big companies and you worked in some smaller companies, but that you are now controlling your own destiny. That's got to play a role in someone who is creative like you are, and also who wants to try to figure out how to balance her life out a bit, eh?
Definitely. I mean, I think also when I started this company, I had 4 kids under the age of 6. I mean, it was
crazy,
daunting, right?
Girl, you are crazy.
Crazy, right? And now 3 in college. I mean, and 1 in high school. I mean, it's absolutely nuts. But yeah, I mean, I think for me, I didn't start this company thinking, okay, I better go work for myself or start my own thing so that I'll have more flexibility. But I look back on it and think all of the things that I was able to do just by owning my own destiny, including still able to go to mommy and me classes at, 3:00 in the afternoon. And then of course I would come back on after dinner to sort of work, right? Like I had a flexible schedule that nobody was questioning because I was continuing to make progress. But clearly I think that is easier when you're running your own company. You need to have an idea and be able to do that in order to be able to make that happen. But I think so often people just stop and sit here and say, oh, I've got kids at home. There's no way that I can actually go start a company. Hopefully they'll see that although I'm a little crazy, it is possible to start a company, with 4 kids under the age of 6 and, continue to progress. I also think that the concept of speed, that I had these kids at home. So I was willing to maybe take a little longer in order to get things done. What was the rush to actually go? And I kept saying to myself and to others, when there were crazy deals in front of me that some of the retailers wanted, we walked away from those deals and we figured, okay, well, we're just not going to get into a large chain right now. We're just going to wait it out. That's the thing too, that so many people feel like, oh, if I don't get into, a Target right now, then I'm done. I'm never going to be able to get bigger. And so that's another thing I talk about in the book too, that I'm like, not necessarily. Sometimes standing on the sidelines this is in personal life too. Like sometimes just telling people no is actually a really good thing.
And also you can like hold your ground a little bit and say, yeah, you know what, it's not right for me right now. And that I think is a huge, huge understated ability, which is to not necessarily jump at the first offer or the second offer, or even just like a deal that doesn't quite feel right to you. Now, you
Yeah.
mentioned that you started this with your husband. Is he still in the business with you, or does he do
Oh,
something
big
else? Like
time.
what's his spiel?
So when I moved to New York, I met him actually in a bar. My kids still laugh about this, that you actually can meet your future husband in a bar. We've been married 25 years now and worked
Mm,
together. And so he joined me. He was an intellectual property Silicon Valley lawyer, and had
hmm
actually taken a little break and ended up running a medical information company. And when he saw what I was doing by creating, this water that he knew had helped me so much, he really saw that what I was doing was really, frankly, what he was trying to do with this medical information company. And he's also the son of a doctor and, had seen the frustrations that his dad had just in trying to get people to stay healthy. And he would never know whether or not they really did what he said or took the medicine. Ultimately, he saw that just with a simple bottle of water that we might be able to change health. And so he said to me, listen, I think it's a great idea. In addition, you are writing $50,000 checks off our personal bank account, which makes me incredibly nervous. So, and you're pregnant with our fourth child, I want to support you and, at least carry the cases into Whole Foods. So he hopped on board and, helped me. And he also wouldn't have been able to articulate this. I mean, he was so frustrated with being a lawyer primarily
mm.
because he felt like he was having to keep track of timesheets. He hated the timesheets aspect of it. He really saw that there was just this like world out there that he just thought was so corrupt. He just couldn't believe that the real estate that's owned in these retail stores that we couldn't actually get access to get our product on the shelf. And so he really just kind of joined, maybe even to save a little bit money for the company to make sure that he was free labor for a few years. And then, he just liked it. I mean, he liked working with me. We never said one day the two of us are going to go start a company together, but we're very different people and very different skill sets. And I think it's always easier to look in the rearview mirror on this stuff that people have often at different points along the way said, oh gosh, I could never work with my husband. Like, I can't believe you guys work together. And it doesn't work for everybody. But what I do believe, if you've got a company and you've got a family that you're raising, there was never any question about what our priorities were. Right. And so if at times, one of us needed to be with the kids or, the other person needed to cover a meeting, it was just easy. I mean, it wasn't like, oh gosh, she's off all the time. I see this with two people graduating from business school together that decide to go do a company. I mean, to me, it's almost scarier because they also have their own families potentially, or maybe one has a family and then the other, hasn't started a family. And there starts to be this, angst that goes on between the two of them. I think for us, it really worked. And again, very different skill sets.
You're the CEO. You're the decider, Kara. You're the one. I love that. I'm the CEO. He's the chief operating officer. And that's how we're rolling. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, and I think at the end of the day, again, every employee has ownership in this company. So I think for us, it's really, yes, I am the CEO and I guess the buck stops here, but it's also, important to recognize that we don't get caught up in that either. I think everybody's opinion is really valued.
Well, thanks so much for listening this weekend. As always, we want to thank our guest, Kara Goldin. We want to remind you our music is composed by Joel Goodman. Mark Talercio is our executive producer. We are distributed by Cadence 13. I know it's Sunday and you're probably out and about. Don't forget to wash your hands, to wear your masks, to maintain your physical distancing, and try to do something nice for someone else today. We'll talk to you tomorrow.